Hello and welcome to this video presentation. Today's video is a revisit of the topic of calling the ITX 10.03 REST API. Today I will be going through calling maps as well as flows. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter at PaulBrettIBM. As this is a recap of a previous video, I'm just going to quickly whip through my starting point. So I started with a CentOS 7.8 ISO image from the internet, and I created my own CentOS in a VM. You can also download a VM ready prepared for VMware, but I installed it as a minimal installation into a VM workstation box. From there I ensured that I disabled SE Linux, and then I also disabled the firewall just to make connections easier for me, obviously not for use in a production environment. And after that, from the root I used yum install docker and all the stuff that you saw in my previous video to get the Docker agent installed and started. Okay, so I downloaded two products from IBM. I downloaded the design server, which is this file here, ITX 10.030 install 112587, blah 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 .tar, and it ended with .gz as well, but I've actually unzipped this. The second product was the runtime RTX RT 10.030 Linux 64 blah 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 .gz. So those two files I copied across to my Linux box, and one of them, the design server, I untarred into this TMP directory, and then from there I ran the install script, install.sh, and over a long period of time it built the Docker images for design server, and it installed and started those as per my previous video. I won't go into all that again. Okay, second stage was the runtime. I installed the runtime. I basically unzipped this and I untarred it directly into the /opt/IBM ITX 10.030 directory. And then once that was installed, I went into the REST API directory and then into Docker. I made a couple of changes to Tomcat users.xml, a couple of changes I think to Dockerfile, but basically I ran the buildimage.sh as per my previous videos to actually install the REST API. One change I did from the standard install instructions, let me just show you where those instructions are now. First of all, the design server. This is the release notes for 10.030, and if I search for design server and come down 1, 2, here are the design server installation notes. Downloading the tar.gz, unzipping it, untarring it, running the install script, running the start script. I've been through all those steps really quickly on my previous video, and no need to go through those again. There's additional sections here about how you can create your own self-signed certificate to stop the warning popping up every time you connect to the design server. I didn't bother with that. If I now also go to the REST API documentation and go past the bit about the web server, because I'm not interested in that. This is the bit I'm interested in, the Docker installation. We wouldn't go on to deploying the WAR file. It's not very obvious, but this highlighted section is the only bits you have to do for the Docker installation. And the only change I did was on this line. When I did this line, instead of specifying 8080 here, because that port is already taken up by the design server, I specified 8081. So anything connecting to 8081 would connect to the Docker that's running the REST API instead. So that out of the way, here I have a connection to my box. I've logged in, I've done a sudo to change to root, and I've run the docker ps command, and as you can see I have the 4 Docker images that make up the design server running: TX server, TX client, TX server Mongo, TX server Redis. But I also have a fifth Docker running, which is the TX REST, which is actually, as I said before, installed as a separate section. And it's probably best if you do it this way around: design server first and then the REST API afterwards. Okay, let's assume that you've been through my previous video, you've just revisiting this as a refresh, and everything is installed and running anyway. Let's go to the Docker itself to show everything running. HTTPS 168.123.9. Okay, this should connect me to my design server. Warning about it not being secure, that's fine, that's because I didn't do the self-signed certificate. And here we are, we're at the design server. We'll log in, admin and admin. Okay, so we're in. I have a project called Project 1. Within this project I've created a schema called generic. In generic, underneath root, I have an item that's just text item, and it is just an item of infinite length. Nothing special about this type tree. I use it hundreds of times a day. Okay, so let's close the type tree. Let's have a quick look at the map. I have a map called map 1. Two cards, one input, one output. The input card, I will bring up the properties for that and go through each one of those. So the name is in1. From the connection screen, I choose use existing connection and use the echo adapter. I put some data in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I also turned on the use the REST input flag. Very important that for later on. Excuse me. And in the schema, I've used generic and text item. Let's come out of that for the moment. On the output side, name out1. From the connection screen, I chose file. For the file path, I just put in a dummy label. This is not going to get used. Again, it's very important that the REST output is turned on for this section if we're going to be using this map in a REST environment later. And in schema, again, generic text item. The map itself, if we have a look at the rules, let's cancel that screen. The rules, I'm just doing uppercase of whatever comes in on the input side. It's nothing special. Uppercase just to show that something's happening. Then I can put strings in and everything goes to uppercase, and we can see that things are running. Anyway, let's just have this running in the design server, just to show that it does run. Build, run. And if I right click and look at the view data here, the output of the map is the same as I echoed input, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, obviously uppercase, having no effect on numbers. Okay, so this map runs, we're cool with that. Let's have a look at something new that I didn't cover in my previous video, which was flows. I have a flow here called flow 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that and recreate that to show you that process. Because this is new. So I'm going to delete flow 1, yes. Okay, from flows I'm going to choose new. I'm going to call the flow flow 1. Okay, we've got a blank flow canvas here, and the only thing I'm going to add to my flow canvas is a map node. I'm going to drag and drop it onto there. Get a little warning pop up here saying the node must be configured before the flow can be saved. We can ignore that for the moment. I right click, what do I do? I right click and click on map 1. By clicking on map 1, it's added these nodes front and back, and if I click on it one more time, over here in this section I can see the input and output of map, and if I right click on input I can do set as flow terminal, and right click on output and set as flow terminal, and now my flow is finished because it has a flow terminal input and a flow terminal output. Obviously there could be additional nodes here, and you would do the incoming flow on the first one and the outgoing flow on the last one, but my flow is just going to call one map. So now I'm going to click save. Okay, so that's my flow complete. It was fairly easy, and I'm going to close that. I'm going to close the map. Okay, so that's everything complete in this screen. I have my schema, my map, and my flow. Back to the home, and in the deploy window, let's have a quick look at servers. I created a server called Local REST API. I'm going to bring up the properties for that to show you. Name Local REST API. Type is web. It's not the default when you create. The default is execution, but I changed it to web. Platform is Linux. And here's the base URL that's very important to get right. The IP address matches the IP address of my design server, obviously because my design server and my REST API are running on the same box. However, the port needs to be set to 8081 and /tx-rest / has to be added to the end because that's the default base URL. Click the test button here and it says whether we're successfully connected, so that's good. What else did I configure? I didn't configure a server group. Servers, I configured a package. I configured two packages, in fact. I configured a package called package 1, which basically from project 1 took the map1 and nothing else. I did not pull in any flows or files. Okay, I also configured a package 2, which from project 1 again. This time I didn't take any maps, I only took the flow 1. Actually that's not ticked, I'm not sure why that's the case, but I shall tick it now. Save. Selected maps, map 1, package 2, selected flows, flow 1. Okay, so in theory I should be able to deploy these both at the same time, and then you will see them appear on the REST API. Speaking of the API, let's bring that up now. I'll put in the standard test URL to get to the API, get the right IP address, the right port 8081 / tx-rest. Okay, this string tells me that the Open API is up and running. Next we need to get to the actual Swagger page. So it's the same API with /API-docs on the end. This takes us to the main Swagger page for the Apache server that's running. This is not the API for TX, this is just the standard Swagger pet store that is given as a demo. So the final piece we need to add on to the URL is $URL equals /tx-rest /openapi.json. Okay, here we are at the TX-REST API 2.0. You can get to the 1.0 areas as well. They are deprecated and greyed out, but they are all still fully working. There's one other window that I want to open, so I'm going to duplicate this tab and modify this URL slightly. Instead of TX-REST Open API, we're going to go to v2 /docs. And this shows the endpoints. Anything that's been deployed will be shown here. I'll come back to that tab in a moment. Under packages, we've got an API that says list all deployed packages, which we will click the try it out button. Change this option to true to show more information about each package. But when we execute, you will notice that the count of packages deployed is 0. By the way, if you're using this API, every time you do an execute, it gives you the equivalent curl command that would do the same thing. What I'm going to do is copy that to my clipboard, open up a command prompt, and paste that in, and show you that at the command prompt, if you've got the curl product installed, you can actually get the same thing to come out of just the command prompt. Anyway, back to the API, and as it shows, nothing is deployed. So let's go back to the design server and deploy something. I am going to deploy 2 packages. So we need to go back to the home area, click on deploy, click on deploy. I'm going to deploy to the server that I defined, which was called Local REST API. I'm going to deploy only package 1 for the moment. And down in the bottom there it says deploying. Now it says deployed successfully. Okay, what difference has that made to our Swagger documentation? Well, if I execute this v2 packages list all deployed packages again, click execute button. Down here in the response body, you will see that package 1 is deployed and running. I'm going to quickly bring up the command prompt to show the same again. At the command prompt, here we go, count equals 1, state equals running, name package 1. Okay, so that's deployed and running. That's great news. If we have a look at endpoints page and refresh, you will see that the endpoint is listed in 2 different places to be run synchronously or asynchronously. So let's do that now. Let's run map 1, which it was in package 1. Let's run it straight away. I can run it 2 different ways. I can put in the input into this box here. I say I want to override input card 1 with the echo adapter, which is known as buff. And I'm going to say this is my test data. I'm going to leave the output box blank because, as you know, when we defined the map, we defined it as having REST output by default. And so we are going to just execute that map as is. And when we execute the map, the curl command is updated to show us what we could do to get this to run at the command line. And the map has run successfully, as indicated by the 200 code, and we can download the result file. Now I'm not going to bother to do that because that's a real pain. It comes down as a binary file and then I have to find it and open it up in a text editor. It's much easier for me to just quickly repeat the command, the curl command, in the command prompt, which brings back the information into the command window for me and is just a lot less hassle. So let's just press enter a few times to get a bit of gap. Execute that curl command and there we go. There's the response from the REST API, which has capitalized my input string. This is my test data, which you can see embedded in here, input 1, buff, this is my test data. All URL encoded because spaces can't be included in URLs like that. Okay, so there's a second way to run the map. So let's go back and remove that information there. We can use this area here where we can send in a file as an application octet stream, or we can just switch to text plain and actually edit the stuff that we're going to put in here. So let's say we had a JSON document in here, and I don't really know what a JSON document looks like, so I'm going to cheat and grab one from my hard disk, database, Mongo, simple. That'll do. Okay. Phishing.json. Let's grab a copy of the content of that file and paste it in there. Okay, so there's a piece of JSON text and I'm going to execute that example. Once again, the curl command updates to show the updated curl command that you could do the same. The code 200 indicates that the map executed successfully, and from this page I can actually download what happened, but again I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to grab the curl command, jump to my command prompt and paste that command in. That didn't work out so well. Let me try that again. Control C and paste again. Right, okay, so there we go. I've sent in a JSON document with the D parameter. It's been normalized, ready for injecting as part of a URL. The carriage return and line feeds have been removed, and as you can see, the output has been returned to us, once again capitalized. So that's great, executing a map on the V2 API. That's all stuff that I went through in my previous video. Let's switch to executing that flow instead. So back to my design server and let's deploy the second package. Let's deploy package 2, which includes my flow. Hit the deploy button. Deployed successfully. Okay, onto the Swagger page. If we execute my list all deployed packages now, we'll see that count is 2. And there's lots more information about package 1, and if I scroll down there it says that package 2 is also installed. Its name is flow1 and its state is running. Let's grab that URL, pop it into the command prompt window and execute the same. There we go, count 2. Flow 1 is deployed as package 2. Okay, on the endpoints page, if we refresh this window, let's just get rid of some of that additional stuff there. Back to just displaying the page. We've got 4 entries now, 2 for map 1 and 2 for flow 1, synchronously or asynchronously. So let's run flow 1 synchronously. Click the try it out button. Again, we've got 2 ways to run this. We can override input card 1 with the echo adapter, 1 buff. This is my flow data. There's a section here where we can do flow variables. I don't actually want to inject any of those at the moment, so I'm just going to blank that out. I'm going to leave output blank. You will remember when I created the flow, I created the flow with the final section of the flow, which only had 1 node, to be honest. The final one had the flow output defined as rest. So if I now execute, it shows a code of 200. There's a file to download if I want to, but I'm going to be lazy again and just grab the curl command, switch to my command prompt, give me some space to show it working. That probably overwrote what was in my clipboard again. Let's try that again. Paste that in and execute. There we go. This is my flow data, has been capitalized. So here in my curl command, I've actually run the flow 1. I've sent in, as part of the URL, input 1 equals, and then all that stuff that says me data. Moving back to the API, once again, I don't have to execute it this way. I can remove that information. I can come down here and using application octet stream, I can send in a file, or I can change this to text plain. And let's edit the string. I'm going to put in some XML. Root data, hello, oops, can't spell, this is my XML data. So this map can receive some XML data, and assuming that the map is set up to receive XML and parse XML data, it will receive this exactly as is. If you've got input parsing schema validation turned on, the schema would have to be in the same place as the map. That's all by the by, but anyway, let's execute this. Code of 200, I can download a file again, or I can copy the curl command. Let's make sure that's blanked out before pressing enter. And paste that curl command in. There we go, there's my XML. Hello, this is my XML data. And you can see that this time that was sent in using the -d parameter and everything in quotes, ensuring that these under DOS, these pipe symbols are ignored as pipe symbols and they're just treated as pure data. Okay, so that's executing the REST API with flows as well as maps. I hope that demonstration has been thorough. There are a lot more examples that come with the product that you can do. Obviously, flows can get a lot more complicated than the simple flow that I designed. But this gives you a taste of what it's like to actually create and execute a flow that includes a map as part of the REST API. Thank you. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to view my video presentation. I hope you found the content both interesting and informative. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at PaulBrettIBM, where I will tweet about new content available on my YouTube channel. Thank you.